Welcome to the Eat This Book podcast. I'm Michael Whitworth. Each day we take a small piece of scripture and we sit with it. Not a quick snack that disappears before lunch, not a chore you check off of a list, but rather a meal meant to be savored. So pull up a chair. Let's eat. When Julius Caesar was assassinated in 44 BC, Rome discovered something no one expected. In his will, Caesar had named his grandnephew, a sickly 18-year-old named Octavian, as his adopted son and sole heir. Not a general, not a senator, a teenager no one had been watching. But the appointment was legal, and it changed the ancient world. Within 2 decades, Octavian became Augustus, the most powerful man on earth. Everything turned on a single clause in a dead man's will: I name this one my heir. The writer of Hebrews makes a similar claim about the son, except the one doing the appointing isn't dead, and what's being inherited isn't an empire. It's everything. We're still in the opening sentence of Hebrews. Last time we heard that God, who spoke in many times in many ways through the prophets, has now spoken by his Son. The letter hasn't paused for breath. It piles phrase upon phrase, each one loading more weight onto the identity of this Son. And the first thing it says about him is this: God appointed him heir of all things. Not heir of Israel, not heir of the covenant promises, heir of all things. The Greek is pantōn, and it means exactly what it sounds like. Everything that exists, every star, every atom, every nation, every moment of history, the scope is total. In the ancient world, inheritance wasn't sentimental. It was the primary vehicle for the transfer of power, wealth, and identity. To be named someone's heir meant you would carry on their name, steward their estate, and exercise their authority. The heir wasn't just receiving a gift, he was stepping into a role. He was becoming, in a legal and social sense, an extension of the one who appointed him. When Hebrews says the Son is heir of all things, it's making a claim that would have staggered its first audience. The Jewish scriptures had long spoken of inheritance, but always in bounded terms. Abraham was promised a land. Israel inherited Canaan. The Levites inherited the priesthood. David's sons inherited the throne. Each inheritance was real, but each was partial. A specific people, a specific place, a specific office. The Son inherits the whole canvas. And there's a tension built into the claim. The word appointed matters. The Greek ethēken carries the force of a deliberate, sovereign act. God placed him in this position, established him as heir by decree. This isn't something the Son seized. It isn't something he earned through competition. It's a designation that flows from the Father's authority and the Father's will. But think about what the first readers of this letter already knew about this Son. They knew he had been born in an occupied province to a peasant family. They knew he had wandered the roads of Galilee with no property and no political standing. They knew he had been executed by the state. The heir of all things arrived with nothing, owned nothing, and died naked on a Roman cross. That's the paradox Hebrews is setting up. The one appointed to inherit everything entered the world as though he had nothing. The estate was infinite. The heir came in poverty, and somehow, through that poverty, through the humiliation, the suffering, the death, the inheritance was secured. Not despite the cross, but through it. There's something else worth noticing. The phrase heir of all things echoes Psalm 2, where God tells his anointed king, "Ask of me, and I will make the nations your heritage, and the ends of the earth your possession." In that psalm, the nations are raging. The kings are plotting, and God responds by installing his chosen king on Zion and handing him the world. Hebrews is reading that psalm and saying, this is the Son. The ancient promise of a king who would inherit the nations has arrived, not in a military conqueror, but in a crucified carpenter from Nazareth. The inheritance reshapes what power looks like. The heir of all things didn't claim this estate by force. He claimed it by faithfulness, by obedience, by entering the depths of human suffering and emerging on the other side with the keys to everything. And here's where the letter begins to pull you in personally. Because the New Testament doesn't leave the son's inheritance as his private possession. Paul writes to the Romans that believers are heirs of God and fellow heirs with Christ. Whatever the son inherits, he shares. The heir of all things doesn't hoard his estate. He opens the door and invites others into it. That changes what it means to follow this son. You are not serving a distant king who keeps everything for himself. You are bound to an heir who has made you a co-heir. The inheritance is not just his future, it's yours. Not because you earned it or positioned yourself well, because the one who owns everything chose to include you in the will. Here's what I think we should savor from this passage. The scope of what the son inherits leaves nothing out. All things is not hyperbole. If the son is heir of all things, then nothing you encounter, no situation, no place, no moment, falls outside his rightful domain. The darkest corner of your life is still part of his estate. Appointment means this wasn't accidental. God didn't stumble into a plan. He set the son in this position with purpose and precision. The same deliberateness that placed the stars placed the son as heir, which means the unfolding of his inheritance, however slow, however strange, it's not chaos, it's design. And the heir came in poverty. The path to owning everything ran through having nothing. If that's how the son received his inheritance, it reframes how we think about our own seasons of emptiness. Loss is not the opposite of inheritance. Sometimes it's the road to it. If you're in a season where you feel like you have nothing to show for your faithfulness, years of obedience and the bank account is thin, the relationships are fraying, the recognition hasn't come, well, the heir of all things walked that road first. Poverty wasn't a detour from his inheritance, it was the path to it. If you're grieving something that was taken from you, a person, a career, a future you'd planned on, this passage says the final word on what belongs to whom hasn't been spoken yet. The heir of all things is still receiving his estate, and he has written you into it. If you're holding tightly to what you have because you're afraid of losing it, afraid that if you let go there won't be enough, the son who inherited everything arrived with open hands. The logic of this inheritance runs opposite to the world. You receive by releasing, you gain by giving, you inherit by trusting the one who appointed the heir in the first place. If you're struggling with whether God has a plan at all, if the world looks too chaotic, too cruel, too random, the word appointed is a stake in the ground. This was decided. The son was designated. The inheritance was established. The mess you see is not the final arrangement of things. If you've wandered from faith and wonder whether there's still a place for you, the heir who shares his inheritance didn't set conditions. Fellow heirs, Paul says. Not hired servants, not guests who might be asked to leave, heirs. The door is open because the one who owns the house opened it. Next time on Eat This Book, the son doesn't just inherit everything, he made everything. Not just the world, but the ages themselves. Join me again in Hebrews 1 as we discover what it means that the Maker stepped inside his own creation. Thanks for reading with me. Until next time, may the Word dwell in you richly.